From the moment Captain Amina Raza stepped into the command strategy hall, the air shifted. So sharp, so sudden, it felt as if the room itself recognized the storm she carried behind her calm, disciplined eyes. The hall was vast, echoing with the faint hum of projectors and the low murmur of officers reviewing maps. But everything grew strangely still as she approached the central table. It wasn't her uniform or the ribbons neatly aligned above her pocket, or even the faint scar across her left wrist that caught the attention of every high-ranking official present. It was the weight she carried, an invisible gravity, the kind forged through fire, loss, and the kinds of battles that carve a permanent place in a soldier's bones. No one could name it, but everyone felt it instantly. And when General Hayter, a man known for dominating every room he entered, interrupted her as she began her briefing, they expected her to falter. But what happened next would turn the entire hall breathless. Amina didn't flinch when the general cut her off mid-sentence. She simply paused, lifted her chin, and reached into the side pouch of her folder. What she pulled out was not a document, nor a tactical map, nor any standard briefing material. It was her battle record, an unadorned, scarred logbook thick with years of field reports, casualty lists, operations carried out with impossible odds, and decisions no human being should ever have to make. She laid it on the table with a soft thud that echoed louder than the general's voice, and when she opened it, the hush that fell upon the room felt almost sacred. The general, towering and authoritative, went completely silent, his expression hardening not from anger but from something far more rare, respect mixed with disbelief. Because he immediately recognized the symbol on the inner page, a black ink insignia worn only by soldiers who had survived missions classified as unspeakably high fatality rate operations, missions that broke entire units, missions that left only names etched on stone walls. And yet here she stood, breathing, steady, and ready to lead. Her record did not begin with triumph. It began with the brutal simplicity of reality. Her first deployment, when she was barely 20, still carrying the remnants of youthful hope in her smile, and the quiet fear of the unknown clenched deep in her chest. She had grown up in a small town overshadowed by distant mountains and closer hardships, raised by a mother who stitched clothes and a father who worked double shifts at the depot. From childhood, she learned endurance by necessity. When storms came, they patched leaks instead of running. When money fell short, they learned to stretch hope. And from her father, she learned discipline, how to sit tall even when life bent you. These lessons became the armor beneath her uniform long before she even touched a weapon. Her first mission was a border-side rescue operation, a seemingly simple extraction that spiraled into chaos when the unit was ambushed at dusk. The sun had barely dipped behind the jagged hills when the firing began like a sudden, violent downpour. Amina had watched soldiers she admired fall to the ground in a blur of dust and fear. She remembered how her breath trembled, how her fingers locked around her rifle, and how the sound of her own heartbeat drowned out even the gunfire. For a moment, she felt paralyzed, frozen by the overwhelming weight of reality crashing upon her. But then she remembered her mother's words, the ones whispered on the morning she left for training. Courage is just fear that has decided to stand its ground. And in that moment, something inside Amina rose. She dragged two wounded teammates behind cover, applied pressure on one soldier's open wound while firing with her other hand, coordinating with a clarity she did not know she possessed. When reinforcements arrived, it was her voice they followed through the chaos. By the time the mission ended, her hands were stained with dirt and gunpowder, but her spirit was carved with something fiercer than fear. She had survived, and more importantly, she had saved. That rescue was only the first page of a record that would become a chronicle of storms. Her career unfolded like a relentless test of endurance, mission after mission pushing her further into the razor-thin edge between life and death. She fought through winters so harsh the wind cut skin like shards of glass. She navigated mountains where a single wrong step meant a fatal fall. She endured nights without sleep, days without food, and moments where she had to bury fear deep inside her chest just to keep going. But what marked her most were not the battles she survived. It was the people she could not save. Their names filled the pages of her logbook like a silent procession of ghosts. She wrote each name herself, carefully, with a respect that bordered on ritual. To her, every name was a weight she carried forward, a reminder of the cost of leadership. And there were days when the weight felt too heavy, when grief seeped into her thoughts like cold water. But she pressed on, fueled by a purpose greater than pain. Her turning point came during Operation Black Ridge, a mission considered strategically critical, yet nearly impossible. A hostile group had taken control of a valley outpost where several civilians and young cadets were held captive. The terrain was brutal, the enemy was well armed, and the window of time was dangerously small. Amina, then a newly promoted captain, volunteered without hesitation. But what made the mission unforgettable wasn't the fierce battle she led, it was the aftermath. After hours of intense fighting, her team secured the outpost. Yet as they moved through the ruins, she found a young cadet, barely 18, wounded but alive, trembling in fear. Amina had knelt beside him, holding his hand, assuring him he would see home again. She carried him on her back through the valley until the medevac team arrived. He survived because she refused to leave him behind, even when bullets tore through the air around them. That moment spread through the ranks like wildfire, becoming the first act that built her legendary reputation. But legends are not built from triumph alone. They are forged equally in the quiet, unseen moments. The nights she sat alone with her rifle dismantled on her lap, staring into the darkness, wondering how long a person could carry so much weight without breaking. The days she watched funerals of soldiers she had trained, forcing herself to stand tall for their families. The mornings she woke with grief lodged in her throat, yet still reported for duty with the same unwavering focus. Each moment chipped away at the girl she once was, replacing her with someone tougher, sharper, yet paradoxically more compassionate. Because every loss strengthened her resolve to prevent the next one. Years later, when she was assigned to lead the Strategic Defense Initiative, her reputation had grown so immense that even senior officers felt a quiet reverence around her. And today, this very morning, she had been called to brief the highest military council on a newly emerging threat. She had prepared extensively, compiling tactical models, risk assessments, and action plans. But when General Hayter interrupted her, dismissing her projections before she could explain them, she felt something inside her settle with unexpected clarity. Not anger, not frustration, but an awareness that there are moments when words alone are not enough to convey the truth. Some truths need to be shown. And so she opened her battle record, her living testament, her silent witness. As she flipped through the pages slowly, the room grew colder, heavier. The general's stern expression loosened, replaced by a deep, introspective stillness. The officers around him leaned in unconsciously, drawn not by curiosity, but by respect. Each page told a story more profound than any briefing slide could. Each entry marked a moment when she had stood on the edge of collapse and chosen to advance anyway. The general saw the seals of classified missions, the red-coded casualty reports, the handwritten lines detailing losses she personally shouldered. He saw wounds invisible to the untrained eye, psychological and emotional scars that no medal could ever fully heal. And for the first time, he understood that her recommendation for the new strategy was not theoretical. It was born of lived experience, shaped by battles she had survived at a cost most people could never comprehend.